Hello and welcome to episode 467 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, a place where a small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt, and joining me as always is the creator of the comic series Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And he's our very own Nutri-Bullet. It's Tony Esmond.
Hello.
You love...
you were talking about me using a thing to... Yeah.
Yeah. You're like a human blender, aren't you?
I'm not sure if that works.
Blending styles, words... cultures,
genres,
catchphrases,
positions.
I've got a mate, he couldn't think of the last word, so he's a right Jack there. He's a right Jack there, and we're all sort of mouthing, lad.
Yeah.
And he went, he's a right Jack the Biscuit, that bloke. And we're like,
Jack the Biscuit.
Jack the Biscuit.
Yeah. There you go. Someone out there, draw Jack the Biscuit. Because we want to see it. And welcome to the show. This weekly show about comics. What a show we have for you this week. If you like scary books and just good comics, well.
Also, the fact that I did intimate heavily to our guest that Dan is a serial killer.
Yes, there may be maybe Dan is being outed as the world's greatest serial killer this week. We just don't know. You don't know what you're going to get with this show. Well, actually, you do. You're going to get a lot of good comic talk. And we managed to... Dan pointed at the screen then, and it totally threw me off.
Catchphrase
because we're not a video show.
Coming through from Storm King Comics, Handsome Dan, the serial killer. Yeah, that's coming soon.
Yeah. But another thing that is coming is a book by this week's guest, Steve Niles. Yes, sort of a legendary indie comics creator, Steve Niles. Finally got him on the show. Probably won't be the last time we've spoken to him. Knows his stuff and has lots of tips, and we talk a lot about horror.
Nice talk about writing and collaboration, I think.
Yes.
I really liked that bit. He was really insightful about it, Yeah.
So, as always, there's lots of insight coming from the guests, not from us, because...
Not from us at all.
From us, you get nothing but absolute waffle. And and is it potato waffle? Is it a sweet waffle? Actually, what do you prefer, lads? Do you prefer potato waffles or toasted waffles with...
They're a bit too Iceland for me, potato waffles.
Potato waffles, yeah. They are waffly versatile though, so you got that going for them.
But how versatile are they?
They always get someone from Atomic Kitten to advertise them as well.
Yeah. How versatile are they, Dan? Could you use them as insulation for a house?
At a push, if they were frozen and there was enough of them together, you could
wear them as
make flooring out of it or something. I don't know. Wouldn't last.
Escape down a mountain.
Yeah.
Escape down a mountain, sliding down on it if you sew a load of them together.
Yeah. Wow.
I think that's the new advertising pitch for...
when they get that girl from Atomic Kitten whose nose has gone funny.
So basically, Tony, what you're saying is you put a load of them together like a waffle board and ride it down the...
You can have a little bit of string because it's got holes in it. You see, very versatile.
Yeah,
the holes in it.
Absolutely versatile.
Waffly versatile.
They are not sponsoring this show, but Global Comics are, and we love them. Yes, I love.
Can we talk about mini pizzas next week? Because
totally.
I quite like them. Yeah.
I bet you, Tony.
Pancakes.
I knew you were going to mention finished crispy pancakes. What is that? That's not cheese in there, though, is it? What is it?
Knows.
It's the hottest thing in the world.
It's some sort of sealant used for, like, I don't know, windows or something like that.
You burn your tongue on that, don't you? Every time.
Yeah. That and McDonald's apple pies.
Yeah, we're legally bound to tell you that.
Yeah. Hottest substances known to man. What else is hot? Is the amount of comics you can get on our
sponsor,
Global Comics. Yes. Here comes the spiel. Spiel alert. Whoop, whoop. There's a huge logo. Yeah. I should, if anyone's got a sound effect of someone riding a Segway past a window, we can put it in the show. No, we won't, because that takes too much editing.
Twats.
But what there's a huge library of titles available on Global Comics. From thousands of indie creators to hundreds of publishers like Image, Boom, Tokyo Pop, TKO Studios, Source Point Press, Mad Cave Comics, Humanoids, to name a few. And there's, in all seriousness, folks, there's loads. There's
a shitload dumped on there this weekend. Loads dumped on there this
There's
weekend.
A lot of Vault that's been dropped on there at the moment, and some exciting stuff there. And gents, what have you noticed on there?
I have noticed a number of things. Can I just interject and say Eamon made me cut my hair like Porthos? And I sent you a picture of it.
Yeah.
But in comics news, I can think we can all say that we're fans of Betty Page, aren't we? Especially when she's naked. Fans of Betty Page?
I agree. Yeah.
Dan's nodding.
Goes without saying.
Vince?
I'm nodding on a audio
we're not
medium.
are we
Are you going to say she's dead? Is that what
are
you
we
replied
talking
to?
about, are we going to talk about current Betty page? Because I probably wouldn't be that.
Is there a current Betty page?
What do you mean a current Betty page?
Like, oh, it was a raisin Betty page. Yeah. So there's loads of the comics from Dynamite on there. You can go and read. I would suggest you read Betty Page, Hollywood Adventures on Murder Island. Carla Pacheco, Vincenzo Frederici, Rebecca Nolte, Ellie Wright, who can draw. I tell you what, she's good at that drawing thing. And Becca Carey. It's a really fun read. Sometimes you think, Dynamite. This ain't going to be amazing. It's right. It's good. Good fun.
Yeah.
I think there's not. Go
Go
on.
on.
I don't think there's too many islands in reality or fiction that kind of got a sterling reputation, have they?
Isle of Wight? Nah, that's not right. Isle of
Some
Man.
of our creators are listening to this from Isle of Wight, so we better pedal that back.
I tell you what, though, when it comes to Dynamite are certainly a publisher that I never really went out my way to pick it up off the shelves and stuff, or whenever I saw it in previews. You sometimes you think, oh, this publisher is like that.
Yeah.
But Global Comics is the perfect sort of avenue to pick up and try some of this stuff. The Vampirella covers are always amazing on the Dynamite.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the
Shout out Tony, you got another shout out in the release of Vampirella.
That's
Global
right,
Comics.
But
you had to explain that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
But sometimes, I think some of their covers, if we're going to be openly honest, some of the Dynamite covers don't do them any justice because sometimes they're just main figure on cover.
They're just archived images.
Yeah.
They?
They're not.
I want to see what's happening in the comic.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah. But
Once you get into them, some of them are pretty good. A lot of pulpy stuff going on, which I like.
Yeah. There's lots of stuff, especially like Red Sonja books and stuff like that on.
Deja Thoris, you would think, Deja Thoris. Do you know what I mean? But that's pretty good. Some of them.
Yeah. So Global Comics is a great place to just dip your toe in, and
you can check it out. Yeah, see if it's for you.
Yeah.
There's it's ridiculous how much stuff in there.
Dan, what about you?
What about you, Daniel?
Well, continuing on my thing of introducing creator teams and publishers on Global Comics, I was contacted by the creators at Lawful Evil Comics, and this is about them. We've got Dark Spider as a hero trying to do the right thing, which has left him betrayed and alone, except for the one person he'd rather not spend time with, his arch nemesis, Sucky Babe, a horny succubus with a desire to see the world burn or so.
That's the best name in the world.
It's just worth it to hear Dan say it.
Sucky Babe.
Join this unlikely duo on a sexy revenge-soaked thrill ride that will turn the world on their head. Welcome to the world of Lawful Evil. So you can kind of read their titles on Global Comics, and you can purchase PDFs. I actually got in contact with them, and they sent me some PDFs. So
that Dark
thank
Spider
you,
one
chaps.
cover is really good.
Good cover. I like the cover of that.
They got some lovely alternate covers in the back as well. Well worth checking out.
The best thing about when you said Sucky Babe is you didn't look over your shoulder to see if your wife was listening. So I'm guessing she's out this evening. Is that right?
No, I've got the door in front of me this time, so like.
You can tell.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're attacked.
Yeah. Another thing.
What do you mean if? It's when.
Another thing to put on your alerts is Global Comics does a similar sort of thing, because you can read all of those comics, you can follow creators, set status filters, and they give you sort of, I say alerts, it's more notifications of when new issues are. I'm properly down the Something is Killing the Children, House of Slaughter, House of Butcher. I've added those, and whenever that pings up, I'm like, great.
Oh, great, yeah. So you've added a new issue of Transformers. So let's go.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
And you can set reading status filters and release notifications for books that's coming in the future. If you're a creator yourself, you can publish your digital comics for free. They offer loads of great tools for any creators to help with publishing, marketing, and more. And what they also have, and if you're listening to this on the day of release, which will be Monday, the 10th of June, there is but 2 days, because the offer ends on June the 11th. I think at 6 a.m. So you've only got, this is the last day. So if you're a first release, get on it, because they are they are actually at the end of their Vault partnership promotion, where you can get 50% off a year of Global Comics Gold. So with that membership, you get unlimited access to over 60,000 comics, early access to the exclusive Vault Vertical Originals, and 6 7-day free access codes you can gift to your friends.
That's brilliant.
So, and they also do notice up to 70% of your subscription fee will go directly to the creators behind anything you read, supporting them and keep making awesome comics. keep making awesome comics. What?
What?
Have they taken some of our... Have they copy and pasted some of my script? If they have, they're welcome to it because they're sponsoring the show. So
everyone steals from us.
But to find out more, go to Global Comics. That's Global Comics with an X.com. You can download the app on the Apple App Store on Google Play, and you can start reading and publishing digital comics like never before. And thank you to them, as always, for supporting the show. Listen to this advert and probably looking to each other and going, "What did we do? Why did we do this for? Why do we do this?"
No reason. Just for the babes.
Well, we're in the game for the comics.
I'm not in the game.
And we got plenty of comics. He's on the game.
Yeah,
we're in the game. He's on the game. Dan is the game.
Handsome Dan, serial killer.
And we got to write that down. We'll talk about that off air. But while we're off air, just brainstorming that mini-series, there's loads of comics to come and recommend later. But right now, you want to listen to the one and only legendary horror creator known as Steve Niles. Okay, it's another exciting week this week, as our guest is a veteran of the indie horror comics game, someone we've been looking forward to chatting to for quite a while now. In fact, their name's been mentioned many times over the years, isn't it, lads?
Yep.
There are titles such as Criminal Macabre, Freaks of the Heartland, the October Faction, Remains, Bryn Mawr, 30 Days a Night, and the new Storm King comics book, The Killing Hole. It's our pleasure to welcome the one and only Steve Niles to the show. Welcome, Steve.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here.
Good to have you, man.
Yeah, Steve.
Normally when I do an intro, I'm writing down all the credits, and I just... My wrist started hurting from because I was taking so long. There's so many different like horror comics and stuff that you've done over the years, and because like you've worked with different publishers and self-published, and you've been doing it. I think you said just before we started since '87.
87 was my first San Diego.
Wow.
Okay.
So yeah, and I started out actually publishing. I tried to publish some stuff. I did a couple books, including I did some Clive Barker lithographs. And at the time, I was just a kid, but I managed to get half the rights to the Books of Blood.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I was as stunned as anybody. Clive gave me half, and he gave Eclipse Comics half. And then I wound up teaming up with Eclipse to get them done anyway. But yeah, I started out actually adapting other people's stuff.
Cool. I miss Eclipse Comics. They're always in the dollar bins at comic conventions. They've been some great stuff, man. Some great stuff. Yeah.
That's pretty much how I know them.
I mean, that's quite a jump into the pool of comics. I mean,
it was crazy.
Yeah,
I remember they asked me to adapt one of Clive Barker's stories. And I went into an absolute panic because I've barely written a comic, let alone adapted somebody else's work. So I actually wound up writing, who was a friend at the time, John Bolton. And he sent me Ann Nesenti scripts.
Okay.
And I read those and took them in and then took a crack at adapting. I think it was The Yattering and Jack was one of my first ones.
Wow.
Yeah, it was before you could look them up on the internet, see how people wrote scripts back then, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, we didn't really know, did we?
I was on a typewriter, I was on a typewriter at this point, and having to send everything through the mail, so it was a much slower process then.
I mean, I think that's something that has been certainly lost to time and history, that back in the day, like independent comics were just getting started on your own, especially if you're not... you don't lock your way into one of the big two, for instance, and you just want to make your own stuff. It was a completely different world, wasn't it? Typewriters, postal services.
Oh yeah, I remember the big terror was, artists had to send their original art through FedEx, and sometimes they'd go missing, and you'd lose an entire issue of original art because of FedEx, I don't want to get into what a pain in the ass it was to type,
Yeah. I remember working on a typewriter and having like carbon, so there was 2 copies of it and all that sort of thing, and you're like, oh dear.
And the white out, a little bit of white out there.
No backspace on that, was there? Yeah.
No, and I just remember if a rewrite was a rewrite. You started from page one and you did it all over again.
Wow.
Oof.
So when, obviously times and technology caught up, did you sort of stay on the trends, this is going to make my life easier, whether it be
Oh, yeah. I remember when I got my first fax machine. And I was working with Eclipse at that point, and they would, it would take like half an hour for a page to come out. But, they would send me art and script. That's when, the script, usually you'd have to mail a script and sit around waiting for a week to get the editor to get back to you. So when faxes came in, then you could fax in the scripts right away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't there that old story about Alan Moore about how he didn't want a fax machine or something? So I can't remember whether it was Watchmen or From Hell or something. He put a page in the back of a taxi and sent it to someone's house. That was how he did it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's something though, like this modern age of comics publishing stuff. I mean, comics, especially independent comics publishing, it's a roller coaster, isn't it? It's constantly evolving, constantly changing. Publishers, the way of doing things, and certainly the horror genre in itself is one that's definitely I mean, it's always hugely popular with comics, I think. But that's changed over the years in so many ways. So, and you've been riding that because you're predominantly, I mean, you're known for being a horror writer.
Yeah, I'm definitely typecast, but I don't mind at all.
Yeah,
you do other stuff. I mean, you did Toy Story comics, didn't you, at one point? So you
you
got to be able to turn your hand to other things, I guess.
That's what got me out to LA. Was Disney Interactive hired me to come in and be a writer. And at the time, Disney Interactive was trying to do sort of the old animation house model, where they hired artists and writers from all over the world and put us, 200 of us in a room, and they forgot to hire anybody who knew how to make a damn video game. So we just sat around playing video games for a year. But I wound up, I did Toy Story web adventures, daily updates. I'd have to write a story every day for very young kids.
Yeah.
So, I can do other stuff.
Did you get any eye gouging? And did Woody have his eye gouged out or anything like that?
They watched me very closely.
I think that's tougher than writing the horror comics.
Yeah,
surely.
It is.
Yeah, it
really is. I did a couple young adult things for Storm King, and it's a really fine line you gotta walk, because you don't want to talk down to them.
Yeah.
You sort of want to write just above where they want to be, because you sort of reach for the next level when you're a kid.
Yeah, because that's what we all wanted as well, wasn't it? We didn't want these.
That's why we read 2000 AD.
Yeah.
That's why we read those comics.
And I was, as a kid, I was reading Creepy and Eerie.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Which completely makes sense. If you read a Steve Niles comic, that's there.
Oh, I grew up on that stuff. I loved it. And actually, I grew up on a lot of Marvel superheroes, too. It was Batman was the only DC thing I read, but then it was all like Spider-Man, Hulk, Fantastic Four. There was, we're talking 1975.
Yeah.
So
me too, man.
I think with the horror genre, though, I mean, we use the word typecasting there, but even if you're a horror, I mean, I think horror writers who are then, you're considered to be a horror writer, they're quite pleased with it, because if you're making a lot of horror comics, you really love the genre, and I mean, we all absolutely love horror films and horror comics and stuff. But I think if you're typecast as like a superpowers person, you haven't got as far to spread, have you? Because horror can go anywhere, can't it?
Anywhere. That's what when we'll talk about my new book, soon. But it's very different. It's a different approach, from what I've done a million times. Yeah, that's what I've always, because I'm in comics, I've been criticized by superhero guys for only writing horror. And I'm sort of like, but all you do is superheroes.
Yeah,
and I find that I find superheroes very limiting.
But in a sort of, in an opposite way, Batman's often a horror character, isn't he? There's a lot of them that can be turned that way, I guess.
Well, he's just a great character in general. You got the darkness. He's a detective. There's all kinds of things you can do, and he has no superpowers. Yeah. So you can play off that quite a bit.
And because horror sort of rides that, the thriller sort of element as well. For instance, like Silence of the Lambs, considered like a classic horror, but also that is a thriller. Do you know what I mean? That isn't.
Yeah.
It
Well,
doesn't
like
always-
Jaws.
Yeah.
Jaws. I consider Jaws as a horror movie. I've had arguments with people, but I consider it a horror movie, and it's
got all the beats of a horror movie. You know.
Yeah.
it does.
How would you class it otherwise? It's kind of,
Yeah.
I can't see it as anything other than a horror film.
Yeah.
And I think it's, and we've spoken about this on the show before, that horror across the board in all media, it's like some people, they want to legitimize it. Do you know what I mean? When something's up for an Oscar, it's no longer a horror film because it's now worthy of it.
And it's a psychological thriller.
Yeah. Whereas all the horror fans are just so frustrated thinking, no, praise it for what it is, because horror's, you know. What is it about horror that just keeps you coming back to it over and over?
As a writer or as a fan? Because it's very, as a
Okay.
Let's do as a writer to start with. Sorry.
Yeah.
to
Okay,
interrupt
as
there.
a writer, I love scaring people. I love freaking
Right.
people out. I love creeping people. It's so funny because I love doing two things. I love making people laugh, and I love scaring them. So I can do both. I can actually do both with horror. Like I've always considered Criminal Macabre as much comedy as anything else. I put out the monsters and gore and horror and all this stuff, and his, all his drug use and all this stuff. But I always considered it kind of a funny book.
Yeah, I get you.
And that's usually down to like the characters bring a lot of the to the best sort of horror comedies. I think the characters are what's funny.
It allows you to care for a character as well, the human. I think sometimes if you care for him, then there's that jeopardy about him getting his throat cut by the serial killer. There's a bit of that, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing for me. Is just I always put a lot of effort. I look at writers like Stephen King. Boy, he sets up characters so well before he kills them. Really, to the point where you think he's not going to kill them. Because he'll spend like 5-10 pages on a background story on a character, and then they're gone, page 11. I love that, and that's one thing I pay a lot of attention to is trying. I try make memorable, likable characters.
So outside of EC and Stephen King, are there any other sort of influences on your writing, Steve? Do you think?
Probably my biggest influence is Richard Matheson.
Okay, the I Am Legend dude.
Yeah, and he wrote tons of Twilight Zones, Night Stalker. He was one of those guys where, like, I didn't realize till well after the fact that he wrote all these things I love so much.
Yeah,
right.
Wrote some of the best Twilight Zone episodes. The I Am Legend book is phenomenal.
That's one of my favorite books.
It's an amazing,
awesome,
book, and it's never been done on film quite.
No.
It has a great last few lines as well. I love the ending of it.
It spawned all the Romero zombie films as well. Essentially, that's kind of
that's what Romero used to say. Is like we were trying to make I Am Legend.
So the amount of stuff that spun off from I Am Legend is crazy.
And
I've got a soft spot for the Charlton Heston movie. I've got to tell you.
It
freaked me out as a kid, and I'm like, I kind of still like it.
I like the Vincent Price one as well.
Yeah,
Last Man on Earth.
Yeah,
that one's pretty good. That one's pretty close. Matheson actually wrote the screenplay for that one.
Oh, okay.
Omega Man, I fell in love with it before I knew it had anything to do with I Am Legend.
Right.
So it would be years later that I read I Am Legend. It was like, oh boy, they didn't get it right at all. But Omega Man stands as its own movie.
Yeah.
Love it.
Definitely.
I think that's probably the best way to do it sometimes. Discover the film and then discover the book later. Because otherwise you have that. If you love the book first, it's an uphill struggle to have that film.
It's so hard to any novel that you look at, it's so hard to make it into a movie.
Yeah.
I'm a big James Ellroy fan.
Okay.
And, you look at something like LA Confidential, and that's barely the bones of the novel, what you see on. I love that movie, but compared to the book, there's just so much missing.
Yeah. I'm a fan of Martin Amis, and all of his films are dog shit, I've got to tell you. I don't know what's happened there. But getting back to influences, Steve, I know that reading into a little bit about it's a horror. We don't really have horror hosts over here. No. We know of yours, Elvira, etc. But there was from a local TV station. There was a horror host.
Channel 20. His real name is Dick Dizell, and in the afternoon he was Captain 20, which was sort of like a Spock-like character that would introduce Speed Racer and Kimba and all the afternoon cartoons. then late Saturday night, he was Count Gordeval.
Right.
And that's the first place I saw Forey Ackerman. It's the first place I saw Night of the Living Dead. I mean, he would just play the best movies.
That's what. Yeah, we don't get that in the UK. That's
we had.
I do kind of.
There's never been any kind of horror.
With the closest we had, I think we've had a couple things. We had Alex Cox did something called Videodrome.
Yeah,
which was where he introduced. But I mean, he played him. I mean, he's a wacky enough character himself, but he was himself. But not really though. We don't.
I think the purity that we have though across the world is kids staying up far too late to watch those old, because the old black and whites would get repeated 11, 12
we have that. We have that in Hammer Horror, don't we? Hammer Horror is massive.
That's how I watched a lot of the original. The original Godzilla stuff was like it was on one channel and playing it like it started at 12 midnight.
Yeah, that was channel 20 for me. It was all the Tarzan movies, all the Planet of the Apes movies. They would just cycle them through like week after week.
So you had all this sort of genre stuff just entering your brain.
Yeah, tons of it. And it was actually funny. As a little kid, like 5 or 6, the stuff terrified the crap out of me. I would watch it during the day and then I'd be horrified at night. And at some point, it just became an obsession. At some point, it just turned it from something that scared me to something I loved.
Do you think that's something that's important to like horror creators? Is some of them are the ones that are like, this scares me. They're genuinely like afraid of a lot of things.
It's the adrenaline, isn't it? I guess.
So they can turn that into the scary stuff that you read and you see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm real world stuff. I'm actually pretty squeamish. I don't. My wife sometimes will turn on true crime. And I've been listening to it in the background. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, what's going on in there? It's just horrible, horrible stuff.
Do they know you locally as a horror writer or anything? I was curious about horror novelists and comic making. Do they think, there's that bloke who wrote about cutting women's throats open last week or killing people in a hole? It's like
not in my neighborhood here because there's nobody around. But LA is just filled with people who do stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a store that I love going to called Dark Delicacies, and it's all horror books. It's mostly books.
Oh wow.
And then some toys and merchandise and stuff like that. But it's a wonderful meeting place. Richard Matheson used to sign there. I got to sign there with Ray Bradbury.
Wow!
Wow!
I mean, which was, that was
great. Yeah,
it just blew me away.
Yeah,
just a great place. So there's a real community in LA. So yeah, but I'm no better known than anybody else around here.
Yeah.
When was the moment when you've been watching horror, you're really enjoying it, and then you think, I can tell horror stories, and how did you think that medium's going to be through comics?
Sorry, say again.
Say you decided you were going to make, you could tell horror stories, not just enjoy them, and kind of like, how did you go about kind of I'm going to tell a horror story, and then
choosing comics? Yeah,
how did you choose comics as your medium?
It actually came out of, I used to play music. I was in a couple bands and we were on a label called Discord. And in DC, the DC punk scene, everybody put out their own albums. They put on their own shows. Everything was DIY. And so I had been reading comics and horror comics my whole life. And I was part of this music scene and I loved doing stuff, putting stuff out. And it was literally like one day I just went like, oh my God, I can make my own comics. There was this big boom in the 80s where there was all, the Clips and Renegade and, there's all these different companies coming out. So it was a really inspirational time. So sort of combined with my music sensibilities, the DIY nature of everything and what was happening in comics, I just decided to make my own. And I literally just sat down with my typewriter and started writing letters to creators I loved, like Clive Barker, Richard Matheson, John Bolton. I would sit down and write letters. I didn't know better. So I was just like, hey, Matheson, will you let me do an I Am Legend comic? And he wrote me back.
Wow.
And I got the rights to do I Am Legend for $100.
Wow.
I was just this kid. I didn't have $100, So yeah, I just kind of went crazy. I just started going to conventions, contacting people. John Bolton wrote me back, and I was working on a film festival at the time that I was just part of, and John walked the package for that over to Clive's house because he lived down the street from him.
Oh wow.
So, and then Clive Barker called me, and somehow I convinced him to let me do some of his comics. I mean, I was like 20, 21 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. So it was just
That's awesome.
Because Clive Barker was white hot into comics for quite a long time, wasn't he? People don't really remember that, but he had almost had his own line and stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, at Marvel. They gave him the Razor line.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
All with foil covers and
Was in there like Kid Ecto and stuff like that?
That's
Was
right.
that,
Yeah.
Good remembering.
Hypercut.
Yeah, Hypercount.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But I mean, incidentally, just to interject there, Grey Matter are available on Spotify. We've been playing them this week, Steve. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But is that when you had your own little imprint called Arcane Comics? Was that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that you and buddies, or was that just you?
That was just me and whoever I could convince to help me. And like I said, I did an anthology called Fly in My Eye.
Yeah.
Which I just lost my ass on because it was 225 pages and I only charged $9.95. So I didn't know what I was doing. Then I did the Clive Barker lithographs from when he did the artwork for the covers for the Books of Blood. So I did those lithographs, and then at that point, I just realized, like, God, I want to be a writer. I don't want to be a businessman. I don't want to be a publisher. So I teamed up with Eclipse Comics. And they let me adapt, all the stuff that I had gotten the rights to. We did I Am Legend. We did, a bunch of Clive Barker books. So, it was a process trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
Is that around the time you went? Was it to Fantaco? Is that right? You did some stuff with them as well.
Well, that was after Eclipse.
Oh, okay, right.
But I did, we did that Night of Living Dead London thing with Clive. And then I did a bunch of weird little, they would publish my stuff. That was just me as a writer. So I did a few things there.
That must have been a strange company. Essential from learning as a writer. That must have been like to do all those different. I mean, you're doing adaptions, which is one learning, and then you're given an option to do. These people just sort of say, "We'll publish your comics."
I guess you're working with editors as well at the U, or for the first time.
With editors, and Eclipse, they were very serious about their comics. So I learned a real lesson adapting other people's stuff, especially I Am Legend. Adapting I Am Legend was such a treat.
Yeah.
I think my adaptation is actually longer than the novel because I didn't want to cut anything out.
Yeah. Did that instill, like, how important was instilling professionalism in, right? And even though you didn't want to be a businessman, there is something to be said about acting professional.
Oh, hitting deadlines.
Communicating and hitting deadlines and stuff.
I try. I mean, like I said, I was very young, but I did always hit my deadlines. I've always been pretty good with that. Went through a brief period when I had too much work. After 30 Days a Night came out, and like all of a sudden everybody was like, "Hey, work for us." And I didn't know how to say no. I was like, people were saying yes for the first time in 30 years. So I was just like,
not getting my back.
I took every job I could, and then I had some troubles there.
Yeah.
You've got to work with some amazing artists though, as well, Stephen. It's like, I mean, it's some of our favourite, Corbin, for God's sake, Kelly Jones.
Corbin blew me away. I mean, IDW set that up.
Right.
And, I was amazed. He was very complimentary. He gave me a page from the comic, which was really nice. I got to say, though, the all-time thrill of anybody I got to work with was Bernie Wrightson.
That was the name I was going to mention, one of my favorite artists of all time. I was going to say, what was that like? Because
that was insane, because we actually met in Texas at a convention. And I came up nervously and gave him way too big a stack of books and was like, "Here's my stuff. And I just love you." And I babbled for a minute. And then we were talking about, we're both from LA. We found out we lived a block apart.
Oh, wow.
We were like,
I'll come around your house.
So we started hanging out, and honestly, for the first 6 months, I didn't bring up work once.
Right.
I was happy to be his friend. He was a great storyteller. So I loved listening to, stories about creators he would tell me and stuff. And then one day he brought up, he's like, I just did this. He had just done a Treehouse of Horror, the Simpsons thing, where they did, I think he and Len did a thing called Squish Thing, which was like a Swamp Thing parody.
Right.
And he just said he's got the itch again. He wants to do more comics. So that's when we started writing City of Others together.
Brilliant.
We got to do a lot of stuff, but it all came out of this friendship. We used to play Scrabble every Friday, just get pizza and beer and sit around and just talk. And we would talk through stories. And then after he left, I would go sit and type it up. And that's how we did three series before we did Frankenstein Alive.
Right.
And it was kind of light stuff. We did Doc Macabre and Dead, She Said. But man, working with him, you've just never seen an art. I don't know any artist I can't compare it to.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's so good. And such a nice guy.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really incredibly easy to work with. I mean, basically, my deal was like, if I made Bernie laugh, it would go in the script.
That's how we write our scripts. Yeah. If we make each other laugh, it goes in a ridiculous comic.
Yeah.
Have you got any bucket list people?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Have you got any bucket list people, Steve? You talk.
I kind of got, I've worked with Sienkiewicz and Wrightson, Kelly Jones. I've got to work with Richard Matheson and John Carpenter. I'd feel like I'd be being greedy if I said well, there's this one guy, there's one artist, but there's so many good artists that I haven't worked with that I'd love to, especially guys like Jay Lee, I've always wanted to do a book with him because he's just got this naturally creepy look to his work.
Yeah.
Cool.
And especially over the last 10, 20 years, as horror has infiltrated a lot of other books that people won't necessarily consider to be horror, but that sort of style and some of the stuff we're reading, they may be adventure books, but it's someone's literally being ripped in half on the page.
Yeah, Image is turning into a horror company. Sometimes I look at all their releases and I think, this is becoming a horror company.
Yeah, so many people are doing horror. It's one reason why I took a little bit of a left turn on Killing Hole.
Which brings us to that because you've done so many different, from vampires, werewolves, Bigfoot, ghosts, everything. What led us to the sort of horror that we're getting in the Killing Hole? And if you want, just give us a little brief synopsis of what this book is.
It's the way I've been describing it to people, because I know people like to. Have you ever heard of a movie called Over the Edge? Matt Dillon's first movie.
Oh, I don't.
I've never seen that one.
It's Matt Dillon's first movie. It's about kids that live in a planned community and how they rebel against their parents.
Okay.
It's got great music. Sort of like that, River's Edge. That sort of captured this feel. But I always describe Killing Hole as what if you discovered someone close to you was a budding serial killer. What would you do?
I know what you're saying here, Steve. Like Dan. I know you're saying that.
Yeah.
No, we've got a budding, not a budding serial killer.
This is quite an extravagant. This is quite an extravagant intervention we've created by getting Steve Niles in for it. But
yeah.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Oh no, but it's actually I did a comic back in 80. Oh my God, really early, like 88, 80, maybe somewhere in there. But it was one of the Fanico books,
right?
Called Danger Brain, and in there was a story called The Smoking Hole. It was only about 15 pages, black and white. I had written a prose story that I adapted, and it always stuck with me over the years that there's more to this story.
Right.
And so I sat down with the original comic and I sort of did a new adaptation of it, and it went from 15 pages to 86 pages, with all the plots. And then, because what I did, I revisited my youth, that I grew up in a community that was owned by Gulf Oil. It was a planned community, very odd in that there would be like middle class, lower class, upper middle class, like everybody was just shoved right around each other.
Mhm.
So it was, and as usual with a planned community, they planned on everything but stuff for kids to do. You know, if you weren't into sports, there was nothing to do. So, that was sort of when I was writing about the Killing Hole, what can happen when teenagers get bored? That can be a very dangerous
I was going to say if you could give the back of the DVD box pitch, but that kind of would sum it up for listeners.
Yes.
I mean, now kids at school have all got heroin and pornography. Do you know what I mean? They've got whatever they want.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they're back then, I guess, yeah.
They're entertained 24 hours a day. And we were just like, I mean, it was basically, my parents just chucked me a key and they went off to work and I was on my own.
Yeah.
Me and my sisters were just on our own. So we got into a lot of trouble. There's a few. Now, have you been able to read Killing Hole?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, we've enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Oh, there's a couple things in there that are absolutely 100% true.
Right, okay.
You
I
want
was
to
going
say?
to ask you.
Yeah, the thing with the cops and the Roy Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
I had a crazy friend who did that to me.
Oh,
Sitting there trying to eat my meal, and he decides to mess with cops.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a great idea.
Do you think that there's quite a lot of horror when horror is the most effective? It's when it resonates with something that's really quite real.
Yeah, absolutely. And for this, feeling that sort of the discovery of a new friend, and that bonding you go through, and then it starts to unravel as his friend says and does stranger things. Before you know it, you're in a world of horror. And that was one, when I was sitting there writing it, for half a second, I thought about a supernatural element.
Yeah.
Hey.
Then I just went, no. This has to stay real.
The main character doesn't essentially have any friends, and he kind of like buddies up with the other guy in school who doesn't have friends. And one sort of leads, they sort of both egg each other on and start going further and further astray.
Exactly.
And the main character's like, this is going a bit far. Yeah.
Exactly. One character, I talked about it, different reasons for anger, different reasons for rebelling. Peter, really hates the world. Stuart, he's annoyed by the world, but, he's going to deal with it.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
What's the time period? Is it set in the 80s?
1979.
1979. So kind of like schools and kind of general society weren't as kind of keyed in as they are now to kind of see identifiers.
Incels wasn't a word, for example, was it?
Then? Exactly. Yeah,
it behavior. And to sort of say, hold on, this ain't going right. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one of my favorite shots in the comic is when they're all lined up at the bus stop, because it's a complete contrast to what you'd see now.
Yeah.
You see it now, everybody's down. Yeah. They're facing their phones, they're ignoring each other. This is everybody sitting around awkwardly, sort of having to face each other. You know, and it was a really fun thing to write. Writing 14-year-olds was really interesting, especially 14-year-olds in 1979. Because I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't very introspective at 14.
No, certainly not.
It was basically like, let's go steal some wine and go in the woods and drink it.
Stare at girls. They were the two things. Yeah. Get drunk, stare at girls.
Yeah.
The art, we should mention art by Trevor Denham, colours by Ryan Wynn. Trevor's a bit of I'd not seen Trevor's work before.
Same.
Was he given to you by Storm King, or did you meet him yourself? Or
no, this is came from Sandy.
Okay.
Sandy and Sean, I sent in the script and I didn't have an artist attached. And they said they really loved it. We talked about a few different artists. And then they showed me Trevor's stuff. And I was like, that guy, man, that guy's got it. It's so hard to capture a time period. Yeah. It's especially, illustrating. And I think he did a really good job on that.
You can hear these kids listening to Slade and stuff like that, can't you? They've got those faces, the spotty faces and the long hair. And
but it's also the way that, I mean, mixed with the colours as well, the way that the tone shifts and the book gets darker and darker and darker.
Darker.
And
the flashbacks are always dark.
Yeah.
Flashbacks. Yeah. No, they did a wonderful job. You know, I love working with Storm King, Sandy and Sean. You know,
that's got to be a dream for you, man, isn't it? To be working with that little firm. How did that start? How did that come about?
I actually, years and years ago, two things happened. They were doing a Scott Hampton movie at Dimension at the time, because I was dealing with the Weinsteins. And,
right.
I know. So, they pulled in John to direct. So I met John Carpenter, and we hit it off really well. We would meet at we would just meet up and talk through the movie, and he
takes no shit, I guess, does he?
What's that?
He takes no shit. Is that an American phrase?
All.
Yeah,
at all. And he's great. I love doing interviews with John because he always just ends them. When it starts to lag, he's like, "All right, we're done," and he just gets.
There was a quote doing the rounds on the Slack today where Guillermo del Toro was trying to tell him how much people love the thing. After,
and it's really come into its own.
Really come into its own, and John Carpenter just went, "That's no good to me, is it?" And then they moved on to something else.
He's a really great guy.
Yeah. Sandy, we loved Sandy, man. She was great. She was so nice.
Legend.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, and she's created this company from the ground up.
And really respects the medium. I mean, one of the things that caught us when we were talking to Sandy is like, when you see someone that's legit. Do you know what I mean? It's not just sort of like means to and it's like, oh no, this person's making comics. Yeah. It's all about the comics. What they're doing.
Yeah.
Legit, but with a sense of humour, which is why we liked her. Yeah. She stayed on for a bit as well. I think we kept her much longer than we should have. And, she was great company, man. Yeah, really good. Very fond of her.
Yeah, but also like a sharp editor as well. So you must have worked with many editors. What was that sort of experience like with Storm King?
Storm King, I've never got a bad note. With Killing Hole, we had one little particular area that we kept having to hammer at, which I can't talk about because it's the ending.
But was it a constructive kind of like backwards and forwards?
Oh, very constructive. Yeah, it was. It was really whether or not the story would be believable or not was the note. So we had to track stuff with law enforcement and things like that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You must have had some nightmare editors over the years, though. Have you heard some just like stupid notes
without naming names? We don't.
No names.
We're not that show.
Yeah. Type them in the chat, Steve. No, I'm joking. That's a joke.
I've had some really good ones. I've had some really bad. My sort of policy has always been like, I take it or leave it. You give me 10 pages of notes, I might use 5 of them. The story has to dictate. I've been pretty lucky. I really haven't had that many bad editors. I've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because that's I'm not precious about my stories. I don't think like nothing can be cut, nothing can be changed. So I love a good note. I just love it.
That's fair. I mean, if it makes it a bit better.
I saw a note once about a movie, and it was about a manic depressive in this movie. I think it's a Richard Gere movie or something. And the note was, "Can we just have him as manic without the depression?" That was the note that came through.
I should, I'd say probably because comics, I've had good editors. Doing film work, I got some of the craziest notes you've ever heard for 30 Days a Night.
Let's have it. Come on.
Well, the one that I actually spoke up in a meeting and said no way was a producer suggested that we change all of the vampires to beautiful women.
Right. Yeah.
Just like, no.
That's a whole different movie. I'd still watch it, Steve.
Somebody would watch it, but very different vibe than what we were going after.
Yeah. I mean, 30 Days sort of changed the game for years ahead, and certainly, you've built. There's been quite a few series of it, and that is a real world with obviously a fantastical element. The Killing Hole is definitely more grounded.
It's almost like kitchen sink. We call it like a kitchen sink drama almost here.
Yeah.
What for you is the most difficult to write? Is fantasy harder to keep grounded, or is it the grounded stuff that's difficult because it's so
you can't
real?
go there? Yeah.
I think the grounded stuff is a little more difficult just because you definitely have parameters that you have to stay within. Like I said, like I almost went supernatural.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he'll come back from the dead. I'm like, no, no, no.
I suppose when you're drawing someone into a world that is so real, and because you begin to know these two guys, don't you? Especially one of them, and then to do something really awful has much more of an effect than if you're, up in space and fighting aliens and all this sort of thing. When something awful happens there, it doesn't have the same impact. Maybe it does, but in a different way, I guess.
It's harder. It takes a lot more setup to make it work in space, But
okay. There you go. There's your next. Do the sequel in space.
Yeah, exactly. I did a 30 days in space, so
it's hard. I want to talk about the kind of psychological stuff that goes on with the characters, but you can't do it without kind of revealing so much about the story.
I know. That's very
it's something
hard.
readers or listeners are going to have to check out.
But I think there's something there to be said about, especially crafting comics and writing and creating horror comics. A psychological horror, for instance. We love so many psychological horror films because of what the image shows us, what the music does, what the actor does. But you've only got, just say, 20 pages, 30 pages to convey suspense, emotion. Sometimes you have to have no words. How tricky is that to get a psychological horror on the page, on the written page?
It can be hard, but you know what? For me, it's actually more in the words than in the pictures. Like Killing Hole, it's the narration, what I think pulls you in, and offers a sense of foreboding, but it's tough. It's a scaring people in comics is a very hard thing to do because you automatically got to throw the jump scare out the window.
Yeah.
Which is very popular in movies, almost to the annoying point sometimes.
Yeah.
The closest we have is a last page cliffhanger, isn't it? Like a splash page, final page. That's the closest we kind of get, I think, in comics.
You kind of get to it. You can get something on a page turn.
Yeah.
But again, you can't control it. You can't control how people read.
Yeah.
Especially not with the digital page now as well, where it's a never-ending scroll or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not the same effect with a page turn, is it?
Yeah, well, that's one thing you mentioned I love about doing books for Storm King is they're doing graphic novels. They're doing whole books.
Yeah.
So I have to do those cliffhangers.
Yeah.
Because I always find that very odd. If I do Batman for DC or something, when it's collected, because generally I will and other people, you end on a splash and you begin on a splash.
Yeah.
So it collects weird.
Okay.
One thing I got to play with the time with the pacing of Killing Hole completely because I didn't have to worry about cliffhangers.
So that long form is your favorite at the moment, I guess. Is what you enjoy most?
It.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love it.
Which is strange because we often talk on here because we're from Britain. We talk about the art in 2000 AD is in telling us a setup story, a future shock in 4 pages or 5 pages. But I suppose your origins come from EC, which was almost doing the same thing in slightly more pages often, but it allows you to get that full tight scripting in with all the beats in a short amount of time. It's almost like a training ground, I think, sometimes.
It really is. I mean, just trying to do a lot of comics are 20 pages now. But doing it 22, 20, it's a real challenge. But because I always have that like page 18 panic. I'm just typing along and then I'm like, oh shit.
I'm going to sort this all out by the end. Yeah,
I've got to, and I didn't have to deal with that with Killing Hole, and I just did another new series that's even longer that I'm pitching around. Same thing, just wrote it 129 pages straight through.
Right. I mean, do you think that's the influence of Europe coming through now? Do you think because they're used to these albums? Have you ever sort of dabbled in the European French? Belgian market.
My stuff's been reprinted,
translated,
but I've never actually worked.
Okay, yeah.
But I do. I love this. I don't know. I hope customers like it because I remember a lot of people trade wait. They'll buy the first issue or two, and then they wait for the collection. So I hope that they're equally attracted to just a solid one book.
A lot of people just buy trades and graphic novels now, don't they? The sort of monthly comic book thing is, it's not as busy. I was in my comic shop this morning and the shelves are definitely not as stacked as they used to be.
Yeah.
You know, and they can't possibly put every single issue on the shelf
Yeah.
in a comic shop now.
That must
Yeah.
change the way you craft a story as well. Do you know what I mean? And it's probably easier for you crafting that one and done graphic novel.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's, well, I've been doing something different for these last two. I did it for Killing Hole, and I just did it for this new one, where I actually write parts of it as a screenplay. Because when I'm writing final draft or a screenplay, for some reason the dialogue comes out much smoother. Again, because I'm not bogged down by page, panel, that sort of herky jerk.
I get you. Because a screenplay is very much bang, 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 dialogue, isn't it? With exterior dialogue. It's a bit like that.
Exactly. So I've been writing little bits of screenplays and then sort of adapting myself.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm getting really. I do a lot of pre-work. I always do like an initial pitch, a detailed outline, and then lately I've been just doing a little bit in final draft, and it's specifically to get that dialogue.
Okay. Do you find that you change scripts depending on if it's an artist you've worked with before, or a new artist, or someone whose work you've seen? Do you adapt the script per artist sometimes?
Like Killing Hole was very detailed because I didn't know who the artist was going to be.
Right. I get it. Yeah.
But when I worked with Bernie, it was a shorthand. I didn't have, and really, what was I going to do? Describe monsters to Bernie? Come on. Yeah. So
I'm guessing when Ben Templesmith as well he's so distinctive. There's a certain thing you've got to leave to him, I guess.
Yeah, and I always I'm doing 50% of the work. So I especially when we were doing 30 days. I mean, it was Ben. I came up with feral vampire, but he came up with the look.
Yeah.
He came up with the razor teeth, and that just he made them very scary. So I lean on the artist quite a bit.
Have you got any tips for that? We have a lot of writers and artists who listen. Have you got any tips on that collaboration process about how much you lean, how much you don't, how much you supervise, how much you don't? Do you ask for daily pages? How does it work with you?
You've got to, because I write full scripts, but you've got to know your artist. Like another guy, I work with Scott Hampton a lot.
Yeah,
and he's another one. I just don't have to go into a lot of detail with stuff with him. But Killing Hole was very detailed. This new one I wrote, because I didn't know who the artist was going to be, is very detailed. Not like an Alan Moore script detail, but
that's too much, man.
I don't know how he does it.
But I mean, when you're working with an editor, do you tend to get the pages sent through to you as well? Say, for example, you're working with IDW. Does the artist send the pages to you as well as to the editor, or do you just go right over to you? Got any questions? Come to me. But the editor makes the decisions, or how does it work?
It all works very differently. Usually what I'll do is I write the initial script. It goes off to the artist. The artist usually sends me pages, so I can do a final draft of the script based on the art.
Okay.
Because there's always little changes, and like Ben and Bernie would add, they add, subtract panels. So you got to sync it up again. But it's fun. I mean, every comic's a little different, depending who you're working with.
Do you think it's like communication? Obviously, collaboration is the art of knowing what to lose and not being too. You can't have too tight a grip on what you're creating if it's a collaboration, can you?
Yeah,
can't be too precious. I think.
Yeah. That's the word I always use. Because I think I was early on. I was a lot like, oh, this has to be what I wrote.
Yeah.
Now it's really it's crafting. Like I said with Storm King, they came up with a note that I had to deal with to make the thing make sense.
Yeah.
And I love the challenge.
And certainly you can have an artist will then give you a character sketch, which may be different to what you thought, but then your brain probably thinks in a different. Has that ever happened where you've had an artist almost change the way you're thinking about an arc or a story?
I mean, Ben, he made the vampires so vicious looking. I mean, we joked when we were first writing, we were like, these are like land sharks.
Yeah.
And then visualized it, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what it's going to look like.
And you just know, right, awesome. I can just put the foot to the floor and go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
as much as I love the movie, the comic is almost much more. It goes there more for me.
There's
You know,
more
it's
to it.
stranger. You know, it's just something different. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was happy with the movie, but you
Yeah.
know, I have a real affection for the comic too.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it was one of those when I watched it, I was like, shit, that was really good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in a time when comic book movies, especially horror comic book movies, just were not doing that, I was like, oh, thank God.
I lucked out. That was the one decision I made because I don't know if you guys remember when the comic sold, but it went nuts.
Yeah.
So we had a 3-studio bidding war going on.
Oh wow.
And I remember my agents calling me and going like, well, we got this offer, this offer, this offer. And the one I just heard Sam Raimi was attached to one. And I didn't even hear the money. I just went, you go with Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
You
Nice.
know,
Yeah.
go with the guy, you know, Spider-Man and Evil Dead and just all that. That's the guy who's going to make it right.
Yeah.
Come on in, Steve. Top 3 horror film directors. Top 3.
For me,
Yeah.
directors. Well, Carpenter,
Yeah.
George Romero, because George Romero made Night of the Living Dead. Carpenter. The third is tough.
Yeah.
Third is
I agree with you on those two. I'm going with Cronenberg for my third.
You go.
Yeah.
Old Cronenberg.
I was going to say like James Whale or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah,
I was
okay,
about,
yeah.
because you're a big
I love
fan of
it.
like that, your sort of universal horror kind of.
Yeah. Oh, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, that's the stuff they used to run those constantly.
Yeah.
You know, on TV. So I grew up with them.
Yeah. I mean, gun to your head, who's your favourite of those monsters? You know, the classic lineup.
I got to go with Frankenstein.
Because we can see a picture of him over your shoulder. To be fair.
Yeah, I was going to say the entire wall is half it is filled with Frankenstein.
Oh, and his head's in a glass cage. That's totally normal, Steve.
Yeah.
Everyone's got that.
So, but for you, that sort, and you've written some Frankenstein stuff as well. But for you, with that character, was it a case of you had the classic movies, and at what point did the Mary Shelley book come up? And of course, the legendary Bernie Wrightson one, which is one of the greatest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the novel and everything, the comics. You know, how has that Frankenstein experience been for you?
It's been fantastic. I actually recently got somebody asked me to write another Frankenstein story.
Okay.
I'm like, yep, let's do it.
That's got to be quite difficult, though, isn't it? Because
It gets there. You know, the thing is I always base it on the novel. You know,
Right.
you can't base it on Universal. You know, that's their own thing. And you know, to me, the novel especially, it's about an abandoned child. You know, more than anything. So I've really related that. I love the sympathetic monsters. I love King Kong. I love Creature from the Black Lagoon. You know, as a kid, the Creature from the Black Lagoon used to upset me so much as a kid. You know, because I'd just be like, just leave him alone. You know, none of this would happen if you just leave him alone.
Well, the same with Frankenstein, totally, isn't it? Just leave him alone. Stop chasing him.
Leave him
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind the Marvel series from the 70s or 80s. So that was a good little series.
I love those. Yeah, those were fun. Those were really fun. Actually, some of my, because I collect original art, I actually have pages from the Marvel team up with Frankenstein and Spider-Man.
Ah, nice. Oh,
The
cool.
Sal Buscema pages.
Oh, right.
That's
nice.
quite a pairing.
I love a pair.
They used to throw anyone together in those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I used to love them.
The Doc Savage one, I think I've got somewhere. Yeah.
So what? I mean, you've handled many sort of monster genre type of horror. What is one that you haven't tackled yet, if there is any? And what's one that you would be scared of tackling, whether it be again or you haven't
reticent?
Done it yet?
Yeah.
One I've tackled, but I don't think I've hit it or anybody else has hit it, is werewolves. I don't think anybody's got that like, oh my God, werewolf story yet.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about it all the time, and I just don't have it. You know, people have done a high concept thing, but that has never happened. What I'm scared of is even attempting to do an Exorcist type thing.
Okay.
Because it's been done so well.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's hot again now, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a batch of devil movies out right now.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Asylum
First
from
Omen.
Storm King there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Exorcism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The First Omen, I just saw Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah.
You know, did you see that one?
Yes.
Yes, we really like that.
We
We
really
were chatting
like
about
that,
that
yeah.
the other day.
Yeah, I
it's
liked
good.
it.
Yeah.
I just like because it just sort of putters along, then it just goes ape shit.
Yeah.
I just love
and
that.
it feels very episodic as well. There's almost like a Twilight Zone inside number 9 kind of.
It's a little bit of Black Mirror as well. We're
Yeah.
big fans of Black Mirror as well, you know.
Yeah.
Someone said you should rewatch it and look at any of the reflective or mirrored surfaces in the film because there's something going on. And I was like, I'll do that at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that.
Who has
I
the
don't know
time
if that's
then?
legit.
Who has...
I don't know if that's legit. What, to
who
watch
has
movies
the time?
over
But
and
then
over?
again, like when the Haunting of Hill House hit Netflix, the amount of times that probably got rewatched because people were just not paying attention to the story, just watching the background constantly.
Yep. Yeah.
That's why I watch Kevin Smith movies, so I can see the cameraman in the reflection of cards and things.
Wow.
Oh dear. Yeah. What do you think?
Chasing Amy.
Yeah. I mean, apart from like, obviously you're reticent to tackle Exorcist, but what do you think is take Exorcist and Werewolves out of it? You know, for all those budding horror writers out there, what's the story that you want to see someone tackle that hasn't?
As a
been
reader,
done
you
yet?
mean? V?
Yeah, as a reader.
That's a tough one. Well, I mean, actually, leaving those two out, those are the two I'd pick.
Right.
You know, I want to read a really great werewolf story. I love werewolf, you know, but I just feel
werewolves have so many levels to them as well. I think because werewolves are my that's the monster that's mine. But then you have like, is it bipedal?
What's your favorite?
Is it? Now I know, especially in the UK, American Werewolf in London has a lot of people's hearts.
It's amazing.
But for me, the Howling is
We're big Howling fans, man. Love the Howling.
Yeah,
I love the first three. Sybil Danning is a werewolf.
first-
Just
Howling 2 is absolutely mental. Absolutely mental.
Sybil Danning's the best werewolf.
right. I
ever on film.
cannot. They're not
Yeah, no.
speaking for me.
When he
Werewolf
says-
orgies with Sybil Danning. I don't know what's up with you. Why aren't you enjoying that?
Like Christopher Lee says, we've got to go to the home of werewolves, Transylvania. What? Transylvania?
You guys see Dog Soldiers?
Yeah,
Love it, man.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a
Why
good
was there never a sequel? That's such a good film.
Yeah.
When he has a fist fight with the werewolf, we love
Yeah.
that film, man, over here.
I think it's one of the problems
Yeah.
of some of these horror monsters being taken on by, you know, bigger franchises or the superhero genre or things like that. They just become monsters that, you know, oh, there's someone that turns into a wolf. You know, nothing special about it. Or there's someone that's a vampire. These things have almost been neutered to the point. I think one of the many reasons that 30 Days resonated because vampires became dangerous again.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was the entire point.
Yeah.
You know, when we made that comic, you know, Buffy was very popular, Twilight was very popular, True Blood was very, you know, people were dating vampires for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Just absolutely, just took all the fear out of it.
Yeah.
You know, they made it into a romance character.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know.
but we're getting a bit of that with serial killers now because it seems to be every freaking podcast is serial killers.
Yeah.
Everything on Netflix is serial killers.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anyone left in general population who isn't a serial killer now.
Right.
Yeah, and that's been
Apart from
watered
us.
down a bit. Apart from us, obviously, well,
You know,
not,
like,
not Dan, but
They do documentaries, and my wife loves the true crime stuff. And like they do a serial killer, and they killed like one person. It's like, well,
technically not a
really-
serial killer.
Yeah, it's kind of.
yeah.
You might be scraping the bottom of the barrel there.
It's a
Is
numbers
it more
game.
than three? Three
Yeah, I think
or
it
more?
is.
Yeah.
FBI's definition, I think, says above 4, doesn't it? I think even the FBI is saying it's yeah. But I mean, that's what you're trying to do again with Killing Hole, isn't it? You're trying to, you know, make it believable and make it, you know, like
And come
without
at it
spoil.
from
We can't
different
spoil it. I know that's the thing,
Yeah.
can we? You know,
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I wanted to come at it from a different angle. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
you always see the other end of it. You know,
Yeah.
but you never see children.
Yeah.
I think we had Durf on a couple of years ago and talking about a couple of his books, and my best friend is Dharma does a similar thing. I think in a very different way to
I heard
you.
it's great though.
Yeah,
It's very
definitely check that out,
interesting. Yeah, much better than the film was and everything. But but it's done with Durf style, so it's done as almost as like an underground comic. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what we need. I think people sort of comply to the cliche too much these days in relation to horror books.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, Steve, what is one? I mean, it's such a broad question, but what are a couple of tips for horror creators right now in the indie comic scene? Because people are just making comics for themselves now, and that's why we love this scene so much now. It's so much easier. But what tip would you have for those people who they've got their horror idea and they want to put it out in the world?
don't ask for permission. Do it. Just go out and do it. There's ways now. I mean, when I started doing this stuff, I had to raise money for the printers, and we had like 12 distributors, and there was all this business stuff to deal with. But now, honestly, you can do a comic. You can print it yourself. You can do it digitally. There's a lot of ways, but see it through. Go to conventions, meet editors, show people your work. There's a lot of steps. I just that and this. It always sounds like I'm being obnoxious, but if you want to be a writer, you got to write. I meet so many people who just have these ideas. I have people approach me all the time. They're like, "Will you write my ideas?"
Yep.
I'm just like, no, you write your ideas.
Yeah. We get that a lot with people we meet at convention tables and stuff. Tell us about their idea for a comic, and we're like, well, crack on. These days, printing stuff is easily available.
Make it, man.
Yeah. We want to read
Everyone
it.
can have
Go away
ideas.
and make it. Yeah.
And there's a lot of comic companies now. So, start, and they all have submission guidelines on their websites. So you got to do it. You just got to, unfortunately, I mean, you want to be a writer and artist, you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah. And I think certainly with horror, there's, no matter what you like, there's an audience for it, because if you like a certain type of horror, someone else is going to like that type of horror.
Everybody always talks about, there's cycles of horror. It's like, no, there's just cycles of popularity.
Yeah.
Horror is always there.
Yeah. And which means you're always going to be there for us, Steve, and we thank you for that. So, I mean, this has been a long time coming. We've wanted to speak to you for a long time. But,
good, yeah.
I mean, where can people find out what's coming next from you? And when is the Killing Hole going to be out and about?
Killing Hole is July 10th. And people can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and, well, if anybody's on Blue Sky, I'm there too.
And you got a website as well, which is, I think it's got an interview with that dude from the movie, isn't it? We were just talking about. I forget the actor's name. Sorry. Yeah.
David Dastmalchian. Yeah. He and I did a comic together. He's a big horror fan.
Which comic was that? Was that the... Which comic was it?
Count Crowley.
I love that book.
Criminal Cop.
I thought it was,
Did you read it?
Yeah. I read the first series. I know there's been another... I'm caught up with it yet, but
I knew I wanted to do it as soon I read his character, and she's sober and Cal is so not sober.
Yeah.
So, I was like, this is going to be a really fun team up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. He also knows his comics as well, doesn't he? So
sure does. Yeah. He said he met me like 3 times at conventions over the years. So he's a big fan. I mean, he's been doing conventions, and he's a good man too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Steve. There you go. I mean, finally, we're trying to bag all the horror writers we can, and we had to get one of the best indie ones on that scene. I mean, I'm sure we're going to get him back for a future show just to talk about horror in general. So watch this space, and thank you again, Steve. You've been amazing.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
And there you have it. Another brilliant comic name. Etched off the bucket
I told
list.
people we'd had another good interview this week.
Yeah.
Told them.
Yep. And as always, when you meet these creators that you've been a fan of, and I think we're very lucky over the years that they all, to a man or woman or whatever, they've all been fantastic, haven't they?
Yes.
So,
they've.
And I've been a Steve Niles reader for quite some years, so it was like it's an absolute joy. So looking forward to more Steve Niles comics coming up in the future. And speaking of stuff coming up in the future, do we have any shout-outs this week, gents?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So Sector 13, our buddies, have released 3 titles. I think as we speak, it's just been the close of the Enniskillen Comic Convention, which I hear massively good things about. I was telling you, I don't think it's my place to tell you, but I was telling you a story about a buddy of ours who met like a top-line creator, and the dude was so nice, it's like made his year, I think. Yeah. So these comics fund NHS charities together. All money after print costs, etc., go to the charity. You got WAP, Splank, and Yow.
Yep.
The first day they launched was yesterday, the 7th of June, at Enniskillen Festival. Humour and adventure strips like those great UK comics. And they've got some great creators in there. They've got Nigel Parkinson, who's from the Beano, who we really must get on one day. And we met him on a panel, didn't we, at Nottingham once? A really nice guy. Dave Windett, Metafrog, Keck W, Paul Trimble, who's the Enniskillen organizer, and even Steve McManus is there. So if you go to boxofrainmag.co.uk/store, you can buy them. I've used the site before. It's very easy to buy stuff from. But go and get them. They're good, great comics. We've been sent through the links to have a look at them, and they also raise money for a great charity as well. That's one. My other one is purely about me and Cliff. We're going to be at Heroes next weekend. So come and see us. That's the weekend of the 14th to the 16th, Friday the 14th to Sunday the 16th of June. We're going to be at Heroes in Charlotte. I've just noticed Doug Wagner's going to be there. So I'm going to go and say hello to him. So that's quite cool. So we're going to wander around. If you think, oh, Tony's, I don't know, just message me. Come and I'd like to meet anyone who's there who's ever listened to us talk shit on here. But give us a shout. But I can't wait for that one. So I'll be doing my usual calling in knackered, like sore throat next week, I guess.
Looking forward to it, mate.
Good. Yeah, me too. Cheers, man. Hey, man.
What about you, Dan?
Macc Pow, 20th to the 23rd of June, 2024, Macclesfield's Comic Art Festival. We've got some people in the ACP community going to be either tabling or
I'll table at that. It's good fun.
Yeah. So go check that one out. You can go to macpow.co.uk for more details on that.
I've got a feeling is it Mark Miller opening it on a video or something? Is that right?
I'd have to take your word for that.
I'm not sure I got that right now. Not
got
sure.
A kick-ass screening on
maybe
Thursday.
That's it.
So potentially, Oh, got a Kira screening. There you go. Transformers the movie screening. Wow, lovely stuff. Okay, we've got Blam and Glam, complete volume 1, 240 plus pages, deluxe hardcover or trade paperback. Collects issue 1 to 8 of the series in which a woman with amnesia battles demonic mecha monsters. From our friend Richard Morgan. Go check that out. It's absolutely obliterated his target. I'm very impressed, to be honest. He's done really well there. So nice work, Richard.
He's put a video out, hasn't he, of the test print, I think, is it? Looks really lovely.
It's a big old chunk of a book.
Yeah.
Give a shout out to, we got a couple of draws going on. Dave Hingley's tackling a kaiju monster list that he's put together. I think the last one I saw was Drew Mothra, and Zach Cobb and I are tackling the June character.
Nice, they're looking really
together.
good, Dan. I love them.
Oh, cheers. They don't.
I would definitely do.
And I
your
hate
Charney.
June. No,
I would
I don't.
I would definitely do Charlie, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I wanted to hear.
I'm attracted to your drawing section.
I've got to say, like, the drawings aren't what
That's
I
how you know
imagine
you've made it.
The drawings aren't what I imagine the characters to be. They're kind of just drawings. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone could ever capture what I think those characters look like. They exist in the book and not really in my head. I don't know.
When could you hear their thoughts
in the book, but not really in your head? But surely
Yeah,
when reading the prose, you're crafting the vision of them in your head.
No, I don't really have a kind of a strong vision of them. I
You just have an empty head.
Yeah. Well, it's such a kind of a strange. The only thing that's kind of nearest to it is the Lynch.
What?
The nearest thing to it is like the Lynch version of the Dune universe. I think it'd be such an odd styling that it's maybe beyond my imagination to think up something like
It's
that.
interesting when you read something, isn't it? And then there's an adaptation of some kind. How does that, if you go back to read it, even if you try not to, there must be some sort of influence.
Oh, yeah. Especially with a movie that has such an impact like the original Dune movie.
Yeah. I see way more of the original Dune when I redid it recently. I was picturing more the Lynch Dune.
It's weird the amount of Supermen we've seen on screen, from the absolutely brilliant, Christopher Reeve to all the other ones. I never picture the actors when I'm reading the comic, ever.
No.
I know you're presented with the image, but not always very well defined.
But what about I think it's harder with prose, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I read Dune before the movie came out, so I sort of saw them more as a sort of Bedouin tribe, which I think is what Herbert intended. But then when I've reread it, I do still see. I reread it 6 months ago, and I still see a lot of Lynch's stuff there. Although I've seen the first and second movie a number of times. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Is that it for the shout-outs, gents?
That is it, Vince.
May we?
Yes.
Then may we continue with the show, and it's time to recommend some comics to you lovely people, and we've got a few. Now, normally. I mean, Tony's always got 2, and we top a tail. But I think I'm just going to jump in first, and we're all going to briefly mention this one. I think we've all read Get Fury issue 2 by Marvel Comics. We spoke about issue 1. Issue 1 was like one of the proper official recommends. But just to let everyone know, it's still kicking ass. The second issue takes a sort of a shift down a gear in some ways.
Yes, it amps up the intrigue, doesn't it? And the spy element and the duplicity of the characters a bit more, rather than being a sort of straight narrative through. I think
there are
it complicates. It overcomplicates, but it does complicate what's going on.
I'm gonna have to pick your brains to see if you know about this. But in the comic, they make reference to the Hanoi Hotel. That was like a torture, kind of interrogation, kind of camp for the Viet Cong. Is that right?
I don't know, man. I'm not sure.
Because I recently watched the film Rolling Thunder, and the main character out of that is tortured horrendously in the Hanoi Hilton, what they refer to. And
that was definitely a theme of 70s movies.
It's a real place, I think.
Okay. I just watched The Exterminator again the other day, and that starts that way as well.
Yeah.
Getting tortured.
There's definitely an element of that political espionage thing to this book. It's interesting because when you see Punisher and Nick Fury, you think it's going to be a book that's nothing but gunfire and bloodletting.
Yeah.
And this isn't that. This is almost like it's a spy book in its own kind of way.
You got the CIA stuff going in the background.
And as always, you're seeing Frank Castle in a way that you don't see Frank Castle.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's also
the scene when he's on the street, and it's like, how does a man like that hide?
Yeah.
And when it reveals what he does, so he's not as well known, I loved that. I thought that was really clever. And with is it Jason Burrows? Who's the artist? Yeah, his artwork is still really on point.
I think that's the best Jason Burrows has been in colour for me.
Yeah.
A
lot of it's to do with the eyes.
Good.
This is a series that's a lot about what the eyes say. And Frank Castle's eyes they're like ice blue, aren't they? In this,
yeah. It's cold as fuck.
Cold as fuck, but like intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woman's.
He doesn't have a lot of kind of range, the Punisher.
No.
No. He's very kind
and neither should he.
He's It's really well done.
But I also like he's a small bit of the scene. He's dropping into the scenario where he's got to try and find Nick Fury in this comic, and the way he's being dropped in was certainly I didn't expect it. You can tell there's a lot of seems like research and like what there's a lot of dialogue. But another thing I liked about it is this isn't something that Frank Castle's an expert in. So he's there for something. Whereas the pilot knows more. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like Frank. Not like Frank Castle's worried. He's just kind of like, what are you talking about? Because he's using certain terms, isn't he? And then the pilot has to sort of explain to Frank Castle. So
it drops in and he's like, Frank Castle's not a spy. He's a special forces agent.
Yeah, he's not, is he?
Special forces agent.
They do. I mean, I read it digitally, and there is sort of like. There is a page, I think, of Frank Castle just jumping out of the plane. I don't know what it's like on the printed copy.
Yeah, I read digital as well.
So I'm not quite sure because it feels like the jumping out of the plane takes a page or two. I'm not sure whether it should have been. Yeah, that could have been one page or something like that.
So this is only issue 2, though, isn't it? What's his 5 issues? I can't remember now. Is it 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is with 5 is, so he's gone on the mission. He's gone off to kill him, and now the CIA have. No spoilers. The CIA have fucked up.
Yeah.
So that's only issue 2.
Yeah.
So it's always already setting itself up for the CIA to fail. So where does it go now? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
But we also there is a narrator to this story.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's interesting thing.
Who is not in it yet? Are they?
Don't forget that Fury's narrated previously in this series of books. Yeah.
We don't know who the person talking to the narrator is, though, do we?
With the recorder we use for interviews. Did you see that?
Yeah. So we don't know who that is yet.
No, but another
he would know if it's Fury.
Thing. Yeah, an interesting thing is it's not like the Fury who is currently like a prisoner at the moment is walked into a camp that has been bombed. And I think that's an interesting, it's not black and white. I mean, it's war. Nothing's ever black and white in war, is it? So the way it shows different versions and different motivations.
Yeah, different sides of the. Yeah,
it's very interesting. It's a great book. Get Fury 2 is like it's the only Marvel book
I was looking up on Amazon, and like the trade is out in January next year, obviously. So I was like, yeah, add to list. I love that.
They're trotting out that new shit Punisher to fight Elektra in a comic I see coming up.
I don't care about that. I want to see him.
cares,
I could not give two fucks.
A single fuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
She'll make fucking mincemeat of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but however, this is just, forget all that continuity or anything. This is just a good story. So so far so good. Loving Get Fury 2. But Tony, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, okay, so talking about giving fucks, so I actually give two fucks about this comic. Spread Love Zine, The Essential Volume 4. This is easily fast turning into my favourite anthology at the moment.
It's also one of my favourite covers of the year.
Just so good, man. Cover by Aaron Lang. You remember for those who haven't seen it, you remember the kids' game Operation, where you would pick things out, with a pair of tweezers, and it would buzz, wouldn't it? But this is Rob Liefeld, naked, with little holes in himself, which rather than heart or ribs or that sort of thing, you get little holes in Rob Liefeld. He's got a red nose as well, which is quite cool. And it says things like cosplay porn. So you'd have to pick that out and not get buzzed. It's got Criterion edition of Chasing Amy. Little call back to what we just said in the interview.
Yeah.
And it's also got Frank Miller's hat and DC Pride. Fucking hell. 15 separate stories, a couple of my favourites. Dream Date is a one-pager from R.L. Crabb. A man fantasizes about going down on Wilma Flintstone. Yes, you heard me right. That's quite a good one. I showed you that.
Wilma.
He does that with his feet when he's running towards them,
Yeah.
Cheeseburger by our boy Adam Fouts. A man in a suit delivers a once-in-a-lifetime cheeseburger to a suited businessman, and it doesn't go well. Really lovely black and white art. It's all black and white interiors from Adam. Some really lovely nighttime heavy ink work laid down. And as with Adam, there's such a weird groove to it. There's no one else doing comics like this. Very strange, but very good. There's The Dream, which is a story we talked about last week from Cam Hayden. That is where that came from. And Road Rage from Ethan Llewellyn is a very sort of tightly packed, multi-panelled page, moment to moment two-pager about what happens when a gun is pulled in a road rage incident. There's also stuff from Glenn Head, who we follow on Instagram, very good. Noah Van Sciver, we shall know about him. There's a page from Johnny Ryan, which I'd like to see the phone that he phoned that one in on. And there's a lovely strip by Anna Redman as well, who we're fans of. And weirdly, half a pin-up by Peter Bagg. So Peter Bagg, who's kind of about again, has done half a page, which is just, I don't know what's happening there. So I'm showing the boys, so there's a man reflected in a mirror, and that bit there is Peter Bagg, the person in the reflection, and the other bit is by someone else. So that's a rather strange choice, but it's Peter Bagg nevertheless. So get your hands on some original new Peter Bagg work in Spread Love Zine, The Essential, Volume 4. There you go.
Nice.
That's a weird one, yeah.
Dan.
Right, mine's an odd one. I came across this one online as I tried to sort of find webcomics from around the world. It's called Records of April 3rd, 2037. And it starts off, it's kind of like a web reader where you kind of scroll left to, it kind of done me in the first bit because you're reading right to left, not left to right, because it's a Japanese title that's been translated into English. And it starts off with kind of like in the States, a presidential meeting between an extraterrestrial and the president of the US, which is President Johnson, named, and he's the human representative meeting this alien for on the behalf of humanity. This alien's better part of 20, 30 meters tall, and there's like a mass of tentacles. And it says the US president was so nervous that day, instead of grabbing the alien's hand, he grabbed its tongue. And that's when the aliens discovered how delicious humans were, and he's promptly consumed by the huge tentacled alien as all the kind of onlookers sort of like, oh my god. And then it cuts to years later and it pans across the earth, and the world has absolutely been devastated. Everything's destroyed, torn to pieces, and the story kind of lets it know that aliens from across the world, like humans, are an absolute delicacy, and they come down to hunt humans, and there's virtually none left. Humanity's like gone, and there's one guy left, and he's clunking around in an old spacesuit, and he comes across one alien who kind of mistakes him for being another hunter, and the story goes from there. You're thinking like, oh my God, this is set for a horrible post-apocalyptic story, but it's almost like a comedy action thing. As this alien who kind of befriends this last living human.
Has it got that kind of Enemy Mine kind of feel to it? Do you remember that film? Do you remember that old Dennis Quaid film?
Yeah, but more kind of like a cutesy manga anime take on it, where the kind of this alien kind of girl who's like a bounty hunter takes pity on this last human man who's kind of like trying to get back to his family and starts defending him against other people, other alien races who are trying to eat him. I'll give it a go. It's interesting. The site that it's on, which is web.mangahot.jp, there seems to be an absolute wealth of titles on there. Obviously, the only kind of bar for readership is the fact that they're all a majority of them are going to be in Japanese, and I'm not sure how many are translated. But I can't give the web address for this. It's incredibly long, so this will be one that will have to go up on the website, or we'll attach the.
Right, we'll stick it on the thing, won't he?
Yeah,
Send it through.
Yeah,
Great.
so
I like it when you talk about webcomics, man. I like listening to you talk about webcomics because you're the maestro. So yeah, it's always an education to me, that one.
Oh man, I've got a link on folders of like webcomics to read, and there's this. The best thing about webcomics is so many of them. They're so varied and weird, and just whatever people put out into the world.
Yeah.
Also, I was wondering there what human flesh tastes like. Does it taste like pork? What does it taste like, Dan? Is it?
You tell me, Tony.
Well, do you know what I think? Probably potato waffles, because they're waffly versatile.
Waffly versatile, yeah.
Yeah. They are versatile.
Much like human skin. Anyway, I presume.
Well, you would hunt things, Sam. We did that with a dodo, didn't we? Just hunt it to extinction.
It's in that thing where they think they found a dodo.
If we can hunt it, we'll hunt it, because humans are horrible.
They found a dodo again, haven't they? Did you see that video that surfaced the other day? I think they found them again.
I see a lot of videos. No, I can't.
Dan sees a lot of videos and then sends them to us, and I think he needs to get off the internet.
A second ago, he almost kicked off when I accused him of eating human flesh. But he pulled back a bit because he knows that will mean that we will only go on about it more.
I only chewed, I didn't swallow.
He said that before.
Some went in my mouth.
Oh dear.
What was that MP that did that? They said, "Did you smoke a joint?" I did smoke it, but I didn't inhale. Or something stupid.
Wasn't it Clinton?
Was it Clinton? Oh.
It reminds me a bit of that bit from Little Britain. I met a man in an alleyway and I fell over into him. Do you remember that fucking gag they used to do? He said,
dear.
"Run down this alleyway." So I did, because he seemed an unfortunate. Whereupon my clothes fell off.
And I tripped.
God. Anyway.
I was carrying my vegetable shopping home. Going upstairs. My trousers, the buckle broke. And I fell backwards down the stairs right on top of my shopping.
And Hetty the Hoover attacked me at the front.
God. Dear God. This is just to let you know, any listeners who don't know the references, they're quoting things. This didn't actually happen.
Yeah.
Supposedly. Allegedly. But okay, right. My recommendation. I went to Comixology when I was buying my Get Fury. I thought I'd have a little browse around there. And I saw a book from not Deadweight Comics, Ahoy Comics.
Ahoy.
It was issue 3.
Naval Comics.
Had just a release of Deadweights. This is written by Tyrone Finch. Sebastian Perez is the art and colour, and Rob Steen is the letters. And issue 3 was just quite a striking cover of like this, almost looks like a Herculean figure holding up loads of rubble, and the name Deadweights was within the rubble. So I was like, oh, that's a cool looking cover. Also, this Herculean type figure. When I say Herculean, we're so used to someone being ripped and large beard or something or Atomic Hercules, who's all manner of things. But this is almost someone who's got a lot of mass, but it looks almost a little more realistic. They look more like a power lifter than anything else. And I thought, oh, this is quite interesting. So I went, rather than buying the latest issue, I thought I'd go back to issue 1. And what this is, as they say on the synopsis, is this another exciting new superhero universe? No, just a buddy comedy about two unlucky henchmen trying to make their way in the world. Now, I'm going to sort of preface this by saying I don't normally jump into like indie superhero stuff now, like apart from like Vanguards and stuff, because we see so much of the same takes, especially takes on the henchmen. That's been like the main thing that indie comics has done with the
that's
superhero
the
genre.
new spin, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is very much that. As it says here, when Jerry and Clarence get kicked out of off their supervillain squad for not being villainous enough, they need to figure out how to navigate the real world. But they quickly learn that the real world has consequences they could never have foreseen. This is surprising. This is a good book. This one, I would say, if you are a fan of the superhero genre and you're not adverse to seeing these sort of takes, it's worth checking out. It's well put together. It's well written, and it's sort of like it's more of a personal story about two, even though they're henchmen and they've clearly got powers in their own way. The main guy, who's like the strong guy, basically the rest of the supervillains are like, you're useless. Your heart's not in it. We're just gonna fuck off and do what we want.
Hurtful.
Yeah. And like the strong guy's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I'm fed up of just being beaten up. I think I'm just going to get a normal job. I'm just going to go back to something. His friend's like, "Why
don't you get a proper job?"
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. And his friend's like, "Well, I'm with you, so I'm going to leave if you're going to leave. But what are we going to do? That kind of thing." And so they're literally just walking away from this massive battle where the superheroes have kicked their ass. The only thing, we haven't really seen them yet. You certainly don't see them in issue. You see them a little bit in issue 1. I think it's another take on, yes, the superheroes aren't as super as they seem. That kind of thing. They're probably arrogant bastards, which is, that remains to be seen whether that is developed and does a unique take on it. But what I liked about this it felt really more like almost Tony used the phrase earlier, like a kitchen sink drama. Of these guys just walking away.
Opera.
Walking away from it. Like he's literally walking, like the Hercules signed it. I'm just calling him that. I think it's Jerry. I think. And the comic starts. They've just got their asses kicked, and he's like, "I've done with this." And he's like a topless guy. So he's walking away from the fight, and he finds a T-shirt and just puts that on. He's like, "Right, I just need to step away from this." And they come across someone locally who decides to help them out and said, "Oh well." And they drive to this scene of this mass devastation, this part of this city where fire trucks are there and, there's ambulances and there's rubble everywhere. And for them, it's a realization of, oh shit, that's where we got our asses kicked. But it's the consequences of being in that. Do you know what I mean? Normally it's the heroes going, oh no, all these fights I'm having, people are dying at my expense, that kind of thing. These are just the henchmen suddenly realizing, and one of them sort of saying, I'm going to try and help out if I can, but they're trying to keep it on the down low of what they are. It was just a very well put together first issue. I'm interested to see where it goes from now on. I think the design of the heroes and villains is subtle. They don't go over the top with it. There's a guy that's almost got it's like his head's like jelly. It's almost like a gel. And there's a leader of like their supervillain team who clearly has like a Magneto-like mask. But you see influences, but it's not an immediate take. It's normal enough. It feels like these are costumes that people would wear. So the dialogue's good, pretty realistic throughout. From the synopsis, and of course it's called Deadweights, makes it feel like buddy comedy, ha ha ha, blah ha ha, all the way through. It isn't that. I think it's more of an independent sort of character comedy in a way. There's nothing really that made me like laugh out loud in it, because these guys are sort of almost down and outs, and it drops you in right after a battle and what they're doing from there. So it went completely. Like I say, it's issue 3. It's on issue 3. I know Ahoy Comics do it. They put out quite a few good titles, don't they? Ahoy Comics.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
pretty good. So if you see this one, the different covers are quite nice. I think issue 3 has the strongest cover for me. If people see that, then they'll know what I'm talking. It almost has like a, that classic Hulk cover of him holding up the word Hulk.
Yeah.
There's clearly an inspiration of that, but it's almost got an Atlas-like pose to it. But it's well worth it. I mean, it's $2.55 the digital right now. I have noticed on a week-on-week basis the individual prices for digital issues is shooting up. And
I spent about 70 quid in the comic shop today, and there wasn't a single $3.99 book in my pile.
Oh,
yeah, they're all $4.99 and more.
I mean, we could rant about it forever, but I know certainly there is a crowdfunder that we have ranted about offline, which is full of classic comics, amazing, wonderful. I'd love to have the books on my shelf, but I can't say £100 for a bunch of PDFs is worth it.
I know.
Yeah. Those that know will know what I'm talking about.
Yes, yeah.
It's smashed it as well.
Absolutely smashed it. Yeah. And that's not to say anything about the quality of the comics, because if you know what we're talking about, the quality of the comics are A+++++.
But that's where they're preying on people who've loved them originally, I think.
Yeah. But also, it's a consumer market. If you're going to pay that for that, that's on you.
Capitalistic market, my friend.
Yeah. So if you're willing to pay £100, and when I checked, there was like 98
file on your computer.
There was 98 people that had pledged to this Kickstarter, and I would think
nuts.
I don't know. However, at the same time, you could say you get 1 billion comics for that £100, and I'm spending like £2 to £3 on one issue, so value for money, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But I'm choosing to take my money and try and experiment on something. Try something different. Deadweights was a success. Deadweights issue 1. It's probably one of the only it's one of the rare superhero books I think I've read that hasn't been recommended by you, lovely gents. So it's worth checking out. Ahoy Comics, Deadweights. Check the series out. See what you think. I'm going to check out issue 2 to see if the rhythm and character work continues, because I think the character work is the subtle design and art, which is really good. Continues throughout the series. It seems like it's going to be consistent.
Nice. Okay, I'll have to check this one out. That sounds great.
It'd be interesting to see that comic you just mentioned, the Kickstarter, whether the back issues have gone up in price. Because I'd hazard a guess to say you could probably get the back issues cheaper than that. Yeah.
Rather than the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
You read Rook issue 2, didn't you, T? Was it Rook issue 2? It's good.
Yeah, I loved it. Absolutely.
I think we'll dive on that when we all get a chance to read that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
I was looking at previews today as well, the issue 5s and 6s, and there's some shit going down. Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah. Comics where stuff is happening, and hopefully, do you see it on the cover, Tony?
You just went like this.
I just zoomed in. Sometimes my video goes funny.
All right. Yes, there's storytelling on the cover.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I won't spoil it if you haven't seen previews, but
yeah.
There's a little bit. I won't say. I'll tell you later.
Yeah. I think there's another sort of artwork discussion episode to be had in the future. We're always doing it. It's an artistic.
Well, it might work into next week where we talk about. I think it might be a good chat around that.
Yeah. Tony, what have you got?
So my second one is a couple of reasons why I chose this. One, it's a horror book, and I know we're going to talk about horror. 2, it's on Global Comics and it's easily accessible. And 3, the dude who draws this is going to be at Heroes next week, so I'm hoping to give him a jump ball, see if we can get him on the show. It's the Infernals issue 1, the Apocalypse.
When you mentioned this is one on my I want to read this, so I'm looking forward to.
I think you'd like it, man. And funny enough, the Infernals it's called, but funny enough, it reminded me of there's a Clive Barker-ish element to this. I think there's a little bit of that going on in it. Image Comics first issue, as I say, is on Global Comics. I grabbed it straight away. The first chapter is called Bethlehem. Writers Noah Gardner and Ryan Parrott. Art John J. Pearson with Lola Bonato. Letters Hassan Otsami Elahu. One day I will learn how to say that because we say it about once a month, don't we? Mm-hmm. Covers by Pearson himself, Alex Cormack, get these names, Tula Lote, Christian Ward and Martin Simmons. So if you want to, some artists putting themselves behind a comic, generally it's going to be good if it's that quality of artist doing variant covers. It's got a really good premise, this. I'm slightly drawn into it because I'm a atheist Catholic boarding school boy. So the Christian mythology, if you want to call it that, is attractive to me as a horror trope, I think. I find that whole what's that one about Christopher Walken? He's a dark angel, and
Oh,
you know,
Prophecy.
The Prophecy.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And likewise, there's a lot of that played. You know, you've only got to look at Lucifer, really, haven't you, the comic. There's a lot of that played in with the early and mid-table Vertigo
Prophecy's
stuff.
got some great, very comic book like writing in it. There's
Yeah, I think so.
I think Christopher Walken. Someone's talking about God, and Christopher Walken, who's playing Gabriel, was like, he doesn't talk to me anymore. Just that subtle kind of.
And there's that moment where he goes shush like that. I love that moment. It's almost like the word of God thing is happening. Yeah. But Vertigo played on that so much, and I really loved that period of Vertigo in early-ish days. So the story opens in 1945, and there's a couple. They're having a kid in a barn, and there's the old man who you'll discover in a second, as I'll tell you, but is narrating what's happening. And as the kid's born, you turn around and there's a goat-headed humanoid figure who takes the child, and he's surrounded by comic characters that would easily be out of Nightbreed or something like that. You know, even Extro or one of these sort of type things.
Nice. Yeah.
Just like real fucking nightmares of like jagged teeth, wings, skulls in ceremonial dress. You know, sort of really nasty horror, you know, which I love. Turns out this kid is the son of the Dark Prince himself, and they've come to take him back. And we then speed to the here and now, to the present day, and we're to a mansion in Florida. Of course, if the son of the devil is going to live anywhere, he's going to live in Florida, isn't he? You know, I think that's fair to say. I don't know what they're saying with that.
Okay.
A little hint for you.
Does he sweat?
It might be called It's not called Mar-a-Lago. No, definitely not. The child is now an old man, and he's called Abraham Morgenstern. And his heritage hasn't stopped him aging, and it hasn't stopped him getting cancer. And he lays in a hospital bed with a drip to his mouth. And he's got about a month to live. And the Antichrist, this guy, Abraham Morgenstern, still has the goat-headed guy with him. He's almost like his consigliere. It's almost like he's in the mafia and this is his advisor. But there's like this sort of friendly relationship to them where they've been together for years. And he's an advisor to him, but there's a friendship there somehow. And they're like their confidence, I suppose. And Sam, which is the goat-headed creature, pushes him to take an heir, to say, you've got to give your crime empire up to someone. And there's three kids. There's Nero, Jackal, and Baphomet. And what we do is the comic then takes a tour of the candidates. So we see one's a girl and two men. And I sent you the panel. I put it on the Slack about, you know, I know you're a man of God, but there's nothing stop us getting a rim job after this.
Yeah.
I didn't think they were going to play basketball, but maybe that's what they were doing.
It's a popular sport, Tony. It's one of my favourites.
I understand, yeah. On the rim. There's one of the other characters involved in an arms deal, and then the other girl, Baphomet. There's a sequence where she's obviously the weird outside. You know, it's that classic, as we say, horror plays in cliches sometimes, doesn't it? But the art with the horror, I think, is playing in a cliche and then subverting it. So she's this sort of outsider girl at school, looking like something out of maybe The Craft or something like that. And there's this pretty girl who says to her, oh, you know, have you got a tampon? And she gives her a tampon, and I think she's dipped it in chili sauce or something because screaming starts coming from the toilet. That's a nice little turn of events, isn't it? But there are other forces gathering from, let's call it, the other side of the coin as well. And Pearson, there's only like a page or so of these characters, and Pearson imagines them in a way I haven't seen imagined before. Put it that way. I won't spoil it, but go and have a look at the last few pages of this comic. In fact, read it all, but go and have a look.
Yeah, I'm going to read it all. Yeah, I've bookmarked it, ready to go.
Yeah. And it's really, to me, it's how you set up a series. There's enough action, there's enough detail, there's enough beautiful art, there's enough horrible things happening for a horror comic, but also you get this lovely arc of birth, imminent death, heirs, villains, motivations. You know, there's all this going on. There's a lot going on in it. And like I say, it's like a good old Vertigo book, or maybe a good old Clive Barker comic or something like that. And so Pearson has got this art that is somewhere in that John J. Muth, Martin Simmons, maybe some Bisley thing going on. He's got that painted art style, and I think it works together quite well. I think it really does work in this. Yeah, it's got enough revelations, enough, and I'm reading on Global Comics, so easy. Easy choice.
Brilliant. Yeah.
There you go. That's my second one, The Infernals issue 1 from Image.
Nice.
Nice one.
Absolutely tons of comics to read this week. I mean, heck, like if you just from our recommends, but if you add Steve Niles' back library to it as well, then you'll be there for weeks.
Killing Hole, look out for that.
Yeah. So look forward to loads of comics coming out, and also to loads more chat from us in the coming weeks. Got Gab, lots more sort of comics and process chat. But certainly, if there's anything that you want us to talk about and discuss, we're not experts on anything. We don't pretend to be the experts on anything, or our way is the right way. But certainly, we do like to discuss, certainly process, and seeing what we can find out. And therefore, if we find out, you find out as well.
Yeah.
So that's what comics should always do. Pay it forward. So that's
nice little possible comics publisher coming on soon as well.
Yeah.
So small press comics publisher, which I'm sure everyone will want to hear about.
So expect lots of that, and no doubt more comic books shop chat, etc. Loads of ideas. We're throwing loads of ideas about. But if there's anything you want us to discuss, any comics you want us to check out, crowdfunding event or charity events and things like that, then definitely get in touch with us. There's several ways you can do it. You can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on social media. On Instagram, we're at awesomecomicspod, where we'll post up about latest shows, lots of stuff we've seen. I'm sure when Tony's at Heroes, there'll be lots of artwork being posted and things like that. So look forward to
mate. Till Dan's got something up his nose. Till I bore you with it. Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait, mate. Yeah, last time you had so many stories to tell.
That'd be the dream that you two were there. I'd tell you now. I'd love that. Yeah.
Sexy dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can also find us on Twitter /X at the Awesome Pod. You can thank you for listening. Well, you can follow us anyway. Dan's throwing up an X, which in wrestling would mean that he's badly injured. So I don't know. I don't know what he's been doing, but we only see him from the top up, don't we, Tony? It could be an absolute ragged mess down there.
He's seriously damaged his gooch.
Yeah.
Perfectly manicured, perfectly taken care of.
He's landed on something. He's landed on that banana again. Yeah. And he's damaged his banana.
So who said we had kind of an adverse reaction to that? Me and Vince, like they were talking to you about your commentary, Tony, and I was like, "Oh, don't think the co-hosts like that too much."
We're just we're just used to it by now. We're numb. We're absolutely numb to it.
Numb from sitting on it,
which means that we can last longer. And
like it's someone else.
So join us next week to find out if Dan's okay or if we're okay. And there's several.
You don't care
whether it be on the website. I care, Tony. You know.
Not you. I know you care.
Oh, right. Thanks. Well, I mean, the listeners listen every week, finding out how much we care on awesomecomics.podbean.com, on Apple Podcasts, where did you know that they could also leave a review and say something about the show? Did you know you could do that on Apple Podcasts?
Yeah, I did, because I looked at them today. We could do with a few more, actually.
And I doubt the ability for them to do that, because no one's done it in a long time.
Yeah, fucking hell, come on. We put all this on for you.
The gauntlet crashes down to the ground.
Even though they're being bad cop about it, we do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've been recommending your sodding comics for fucking 9.5 years.
If someone leaves a review, I'll be crowing about it all week.
Yeah. Thank you for every listen and every review. You can also leave us a review and comment on Spotify. Let's do it there. And we're also on other networks like Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife. What other networks are we on, Tony?
We're on Dan. Can you tell that lady in the yoga pants to stop staring at my boner?
Is that all one word in the URL?
Yeah.
Oh, fair play.
/
That's what you should always do. Because you don't want to do it the other way.
Never pop a back boner. Never pop a back boner. We talked about that last week.
And that's what you get on the show. Nothing but useful information you can take.
Got a lovely email back from Cam about that. Thanks, Cam Hayden, for a little chat.
I feel like you bought one of those kids' toys, like the motorised things that flick and then you spin over. So you don't...
if I popped a back boner, that was what would happen.
Yeah.
What? You just spin off somewhere?
Just do a somersault automatically.
Yeah, somersault.
Depends how quickly you pop it, though, isn't it?
I tell you what, you want to be careful.
Pop it and lock it.
The amount of fail videos I've watched of people trying to somersault and then landing on their head.
Oh, you love those videos. I bet they keep coming up for you because you love the pain. You love watching these people cripple themselves, don't you?
I don't love my own pain, just everyone else's. But this hasn't been a pain; it's been an absolute joy. So thank you for listening, everyone.
Fucking slick.
Where can people find us online, etc.? Tony.
Neverendanything.com.
Nice.
Yes.
And look out for him at Heroes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Watch out for me. I believe it's a phrase you
Yeah. If he's dressed like a volleyball coach, like he is this week, then you'll...
This is a new polo shirt. It's such a wanker.
He's you off.
I tell you what.
Volleyball.
Yeah.
Ladies volleyball is a
ladies volleyball.
Mine.
Yeah. The camera cuts to you just going. Just.
I'm a sort of over-aggressive wrestling coach, aren't I?
Yeah.
I just need a whistle.
Actually, because of your headphones, it actually does look like a whistle's hanging around.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Speaking of muscles, Dan, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, aka X, at Vanguard Comic, and you can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com.
Nice. You almost threw yourself off by saying aka X. Then that's
I don't like the X.
I know. Also, aka X sounds like another one of those X titles that Marvel puts out, isn't it?
AKA sounds like a power drink.
Yeah.
He was accessing his random access memory there. Did you see him look up? He was doing this, and
He's right.
It's like a computer.
Yeah.
He's right. Anything X related is just awful. From
Rise
Twitter to comics.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh no, issue 700. Have you read it yet? Issue 700, Uncanny X-Men.
No,
Have you read it?
No. You can find.
Do you know what
me...
it did? Do you know what it did though? It gave me no enthusiasm for the new coming series, but it's got that.
Poster. Oh, it's got that brilliant,
that
brilliant print. Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
I remember the artist getting so much shit on Twitter on that because it didn't include enough characters that people wanted to see.
Oh, right.
I know.
Speaking of characters that people want to see, you can find me on social media at Jester Diablo. Thank you very much for listening, as always, folks. Join us next week when the three amigos will be taking the world by storm, and that probably means that we'll be half asleep and just ranting about something.
Get ready for your new hot comic opinions you're going to be telling everyone.
Yeah. It won't be anything that we'll talk about.
No.
But yeah.
Just take the polar opposite of what we said and then present it as yours and then we go down the storm.
Did you see Tony just take a picture on his phone then, Dan? I think it...
Yeah, so I was looking at a comic page and I thought this is a bit lively and I was going to send it to you.
Wow. Lovely.
Send it on.
All this content that no one knows what we're talking about. So just look for next week's content. In the same,
you're fucking driving the fucking Segway train today.
The same bat time, the same bat channel. As always, we love you very much. So from Dan, Tony, and myself at Awesome HQ, read loads of comics, keep making loads of comics that we want to read. And as always, what do they do, chaps?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. This is outrageous. I don't know what the fuck is going on.